Hi, everybody.
Oh, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Nick. Thanks for asking. How about you?
Good. Just here with Dan in the office. We're reviewing a bunch of different deals and stuff right now.
Hmm,
Looking at some value add multifamily, figuring out our strategy behind it.
nice.
When you say value add multifamily, you're talking about existing multifamily property, right?
That is correct.
Not conversion, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So probably like 4 or 5 months ago, we got involved with this a little bit. Just as another avenue to explore because we get a lot of submissions of value add multifamily. It's not as generous of returns as like a conversion because there's less of a value add component, but there's deals to be had out there. So we kind of just keep an eye on it and
Got
see
it.
Yeah, and
what.
Which
less
market?
risk, right? It's a lighter lift, right? So the returns are kind of indicative to the risk inherent to the project. With the conversion from hospitality to multifamily, a little bit of more of a lift. Obviously, you have that hurdle of doing the change of use, so therefore, the returns should be better, right?
Mm-hmm. So if you don't mind me asking you guys, which market are you guys targeting for these value add multifamily deals?
Pretty
Uh,
much the red states, love Florida, Texas, the Carolinas. Doing a deal in Indianapolis. I'm open to Arizona, but I'm just not seeing, strong rent growth. The rents are moderate. As far as Texas goes, the tertiary cities have a hard time to pencil because the rents are much less. Even some parts of Houston, even though it's such a large city, it sometimes hurts the rents because there's so many different options. So the rents are a little lower, but that's typically where we want to look. We want to look in areas where they're considered emerging markets. So, what you're seeing on paper as far as absorption, population growth is, obviously they have to pick a number, right? And I feel in these emerging markets, that number is conservative and the returns are even better because we just did not anticipate such a big population surge. So, in my humble opinion, Florida saw a big surge with the last pandemic. I think if another situation arises, something similar, there'll be even a greater surge to Florida. So if we can get in, 100 doors or more in Florida markets central to the state, so there's mitigated hurricane risk. We're not tapping into the hospitality revenue that the state relies on as far as on their taxes, and we focus in on areas that we know that will pencil because we're getting in at a very low cost basis. That's, I think, the best use of our time. And I think it touches, a lot of, really important factors, cleaning up the neighborhood, providing affordable housing. It could be workforce housing. It could be affordable housing. It could be high-end retail. These could be micro luxury units, depending on the market. The trick is really just getting in at a very low cost basis and having a city that's open to conversions. So that's a long-winded answer on where we're looking and why.
Yeah, I mean, still, it needs to be niched down. I mean, I understand the units will count will be around 100 plus or 100 at least, but again, the cost basis per unit really need to be niched down for especially Florida market. How you guys are penciling out the insurance cost for per unit basis in that market?
We're using the actuals and we're being conservative on the rent growth. So I think it buys us a safety net. Obviously, there's no guarantee in life. That's why they call it real estate investing. But certainly are adjusting to today's quotes, not using anything that's over say 6 months old. So everything is recent quotes from carriers, so we can pencil in the actuals and then be very conservative on the rent growth side because a lot of times we look at these analytics on some of these properties and we're like, you know, saying it has a 5% rent growth is almost like a disservice to the deal when you see it's like probably like 12 to 14%. But you also don't want to scare investors away by putting a number that might be too far of a reach. So I think in those cases that helps offset any other surprises in the insurance arena. Will that stabilize? Yes. Will there be programs to kind of offset premiums in order to attract more development? I believe so. So, and there's grants that we're, currently looking into to kind of offset the CapEx as well as the change of use costs, which is, a moving target because it's such a relatively new niche. So, yeah, things that we consider with each project because it is, somewhat complex, but if you understand the premise, getting in a very low cost basis and having, strong analytics to support a business model such as multifamily, and it supports the cash flow to the expenses, everything else is pretty, self-explanatory. It's just the find that diamond in the rough. Like I tell my acquisition managers, you have nothing unless you have, a property, a willing and able seller, and a contract. Unless you have those three things, you have nothing to either work with, work around, put together, raise capital for, syndicate, JV, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, good stuff though. We got lots of projects up and coming. Movement on the, the Gainesville project, in Florida. We got that Gainesville Select that we're moving forward with, solidifying the GP team and bringing in key individuals who have local expertise as far as the change of use and general construction, kind of to manage that piece. So, but that's part of the beauty of syndication is you can really kind of find out who you want to partner with and why, and just build some strong alliances so you can rinse and repeat for future acquisitions. So we'll jump into the call, and we got a couple of properties that we want to cover. And Christina, if you want to pull up the first, I believe this one is in Fort Lauderdale, the 272 key unit hospitality acquisition that not only am I looking at, but there's another, I think, two groups I'm aware of that's considering this conversion opportunity. Great, yeah, full screen that for me. I'm actually in my mobile office, so
we already discussed the Fort Lauderdale, so we are discussing now the homing in the Boynton Beach.
Yeah, the Boynton Beach. Yes. So yeah, this is the homing in Boynton Beach, Florida. Not familiar with this market yet, but potential. I know it's central to the state. We're looking at a good opportunity. The land acreage is a little smaller. I mean, ideally, we want to find properties with 5 or more acres, 10 being like the sweet spot, but certainly worth considering. Good looking asset. Looks like it was first open in 1980. So yeah, 104 keys, 3-story. Looking at the parking, it looks like we have almost a 1.5 ratio on the parking, so that's certainly really exciting. Let's see here. Let's go to the next slide. Any other notes on that, Christina, that we got from the broker on the property?
No, that's all that we have.
Okay.
That's all the information that we have for now.
What did we submit an LOI for?
9 million.
9 million. Okay. So we got an offer out there. Forgive me, I got a lot of offers out there. Certainly want to, talk about the asset. Good looking property, great location. How did it pencil at 9 million, Christina? Let's look at the underwriting. Let's go to the next slide. First and foremost, we'll touch upon the location. Here are the analytics. Oh, we'll go to the analytics since you were there. Yeah, so decent population growth, decent absorption rate, exit price per door, really strong at almost $300,000. Looking at the rents are decent. Certainly worth considering. Let's go ahead and look at the next slide. And then looking at the comps, we have some smaller units, which are going to be very much in line with what we're looking to do with the conversion. On average between 3 to 350. So looks like they're renting at a very strong $4 a square foot. So, yeah, that's certainly, those are great numbers for rents. Let's go to the next slide.
This is the initial.
This is the initial, this is at 9 million.
Yes, at 9 million.
And what does the seller want? I
At-
think they wanted 11.25, right? Because I think I was talking to Lucas. So can you pull up the underwriting on this really quick? Let's see if we can do an adjustment to see how it would pencil with those returns. Because we did get a counter on that LOI. I spoke with the broker, and I think the seller wants closer to 13, but you can see, its location be on the coast. Did you recall, Christina, what we got for a quote for insurance, being that it's a coastal property? Let's go
For
to
the
that really
insurance for
quick.
this, okay.
Yeah,
Here. I
let's look at
have
the
this quote,
insurance.
yeah. The insurance, I have this code in CoStar. Hold on.
Is that 2,500 a door? No, go back to the underwriting.
Those are the
do you
property
have?
taxes.
Oh, that's the
2,900,
tax. What do you have for the insurance?
500 per unit,
I think it's gonna be double that, being coastal. Let's,
double that.
yeah, if you see the notes right to the right of that, it says, coastal properties. And just looking at those pictures, it looks like it's gonna be really close to body of water. So double that to 1,000. Yeah, 1,000, not 100. There you go. And then let's change the purchase price to 11.25 million. What does that take us to? Price per key? Scroll up,
185?
it's at the top.
I'm
So
sorry,
no, that's total. That's total. What's the price per key? Right
108.
there.
108.
108. Okay. And all in, we're 185.
Mhm.
Okay.
200.
Let's change the pref and let's zero that out. You have $1 million there. Yeah, let's zero that out. And then what do we have price per key on the renovation? We have what, 25? 25,000 right
Yes.
there. Yeah, right there. Let's change that to 20. Hopefully the property is in great condition. Now let's go to the summary and see how that makes the deal pencil. Because I think that insurance is going to hurt us. Yeah, so I think our ceiling is around that price. Okay, so that's that deal. Any feedback, questions, comments on the property, and what do you guys think as far as the purchase price? Would you all agree that it needs to be somewhere around 9 million?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think what stood out was the parking ratio. I think it was like a 1.3, 1.4, which is awesome because usually on these assets you're seeing at best a 1-to-1 parking. So it kind of had
Yeah,
that
I think
upside.
it was 1.44 actually. It was almost close to
Yeah.
1.5. So had that
I know
going
that
for
variance
it.
is challenging.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. I think we can up the offer. I'm thinking maybe in a smaller increment. I believe our last offer was 9 million, correct, Christina?
Yes, 9 million.
So let's change our offer to 9.25 and see
9.25.
and see how that does to the returns. What does that look like?
9.25.
And then I'll change that to 9.25. So I think they bought it not too long ago for 8.8. Is that correct, Christina?
Yes, 8.8.
Was it last year?
2022 of, I believe that's October 2022.
Yeah. So a little over a year ago, they bought this for 8.8, and now they want to sell it for 13. So I think it would be a great conversion. I don't think we can pay 13 for it. So what does that do for our returns at 9.25? So there's a 2x multiplier. We could probably make that work. Let's send out our revised LOI for 9.25.
9.25.
We'll
Okay.
Yeah, will go up in a very small increment. And I think this is the only hospitality asset for us to cover on today's call. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Fantastic.
See, we can also take a look at comps for the rental rates. I know we kind of plug in the average for the market, but perhaps if we're able to get a more strategic view, we could see if there's an elevation for that income or a premium for the size of the units and maybe bolster some of that gross revenue and offset some of the
Yeah,
expense.
there's that too. Maybe look at some other bolt-on services like self-storage, you know. I don't know what and how much meeting space there is, but I know that Ethan had gone out on the property and walked it. So I just don't think we can get to that 11 number, but the question is whether or not those rents are accurate, because looking at what they're renting for currently, I think we're a little light. So something we can take a closer look at and see if we can get to that $11 million strike price or how close we can get to it. So why don't you partner up with Christina and take a deeper dive and see if we can bolt on some self-storage and whether or not those rental rates are accurate. Can we push that a little bit? And maybe we can sharpen our pencil on some expenses and see, if we can still get, at least 24 to 26% IRR, mid to high 20s, and at least a 2x multiplier. I'm happy there, especially with buying at 100 and say 85,000 all in per key and being able to trade probably not at 300,000, but probably more like 275. That's a nice margin there. So I think we're close on something here. Just have to figure out how we can bolster that NOI so we can get closer to the seller's strike price.
Agreed. Christina, add me
All
as a
right.
collaborator and we'll take a look at it.
Yep. And then that's all I have for my portion of the presentation. We'll jump over to office to multifamily, and not sure, do we have Dan on the call? I know he had some updates for our last opportunity that we've been looking at. So Nick, maybe you can start with the 22-story office complex in Houston that we have on our radar, and see if you could shed some additional light to how that's progressing.
Just one sec. Dan's in the office with me, so we'll get that pulled
Okay,
up.
there you go.
Or if you want, I'll do
Fantastic.
the self-storage portion and then I'll give Dan time to pull up that stuff.
Either
we'll dive
either
into it.
order, doesn't matter. Yep, I know you guys are collaborating, so sounds good.
Awesome.
Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, thanks for jumping on today, guys. A lot of cool, fun stuff to look at. 2 examples for self-storage. We've been looking a lot at the ground up development because we've been able to pick out markets that we want in an area of growth and not be at the mercy of saturated markets where some of the retail assets are. We're still very much interested in existing retail assets with the conversion. We've just found a lot of opportunities that are penciling very well regarding ground up self-storage development. And I think one of the advantages of that compared to multifamily is it's a much quicker and less expensive build. So you're limiting some of the risk when you're only looking at maybe a 10-month construction time versus some of the costs that go into the multifamily side, because you're putting up a facade, if you will, and then putting those interior units versus everything that would go into a multifamily development. Anyways, this one here is actually in Colorado. This is raw land. It's in the path of growth for the city of Fountain. And we can see there's 2 parcels outlined here. We're interested in parcel A. It's about 9 acres. You can see it's embedded in a residential community. And we are currently in LOI discussions with the seller. We have almost agreed upon terms, and we're just working with the jurisdiction for the rezoning and conditional use permits for this parcel. They have a planned or PUD here and kind of a strategy for how they want to build out the remaining part of the city. And we have to see how this would work with it. So taking a look at the property here, parcel A, we can see at 10.5 acres. And currently it is proposed use for commercial, multifamily, single family development. They had listed on the marketing for self-storage and other retail uses as well. Just another great aerial view. Again, we can see it's embedded in a residential area. We expect a lot of other retailers and supporting businesses to come in the area to help drive traffic down Link Road here. And taking a look at the competitor map, you can see that there is no representation of self-storage. The saturation of this is actually like a 0.7 square foot per capita on the 3 mile and it's slightly less on the 5 mile. So usually we look at 8 square foot per capita as a saturated market. So this is definitely underserved, underdelivered. We have Buttes Army Airfield next door. That can be a synergistic play for self-storage based on the base and how many people stay there. That's something we actually discussed with the brokers as potentially driving the lease up of the facility. In the light blue here, you can see 2 new products coming to market for self-storage. So we always kind of get excited when we see that in our area because we know that we're on the right trail in terms of providing these offerings. And again, only 5 or 6 total places in a 5 mile radius, with none of them adjacent to the facility that we're looking at, or the land rather. Rental rates here are strong at 150 average over the last 12 months. So that's about the number where we start getting excited. 140, we'll see these deals start to pencil, depending on the cost of land basis, taxes, other expenses. 150 is kind of our sweet spot. And as we approach towards 180, 200, we're in a very affluent area. Median household income in this area ranges between 60 and 70,000. So not only would this be a good site for self-storage, but potentially opened and canopied vehicle storage. One thing we're exploring with our operator S3 is differentiating ourselves within the market and trying to incorporate both those business on each of our development sites, particularly with raw land development, to not only bolster the return on the investment, but also just attract more of the market share. And one thing to point out here is you can see that the rates have jumped significantly since May of this year, averaging 118 for the area up to 159, 139. So we're seeing some great growth, demand increases where these properties are able to lease up at a higher dollar rate, which would suggest that there's low vacancy and opportunity for expansion. Jump into underwriting here. You can see our model. We have our 4 standard units for the enclosed climate controlled self-storage. In addition, we have both uncovered and covered vehicle storage. Anytime we see north of 60,000 on median household income, we can anticipate that the population will have enough finances to have boats, RVs, et cetera. Typically anything over 80,000 for median household income, we'll be looking at more of the covered or canopied vehicle storage, or even potentially fully enclosed units to park those inside. This property will encase 150,000 square feet of climate controlled self-storage across 3 stories with a 50,000 foot floor plate. We have a purchase price at 1.9 million, which is in line with the asking price from the seller, and about 1.5 million in paving or development costs there, an additional 12 million for the building itself, and another 656,000 for the vehicle storage portion. That's the cost of the canopies. We're seeing somewhere between $15 and $20 a square foot. Because of the strong revenue streams generated by both the vehicle and self-storage, we can see a 32% IRR on this, close to a 4x multiplier, and a 100% refi capital return. So definitely a strong project. We've reached out to the municipality to identify their zoning. They've said that it's not use by right for either vehicle or self-storage, but we're open to pursue it in terms of getting that conditional use permit or rezoning it to align with it. One of the tricky things is being a PUD, it's kind of a outlier for zoning where it's not their typical designated one, but it's more of like a special interest from that city of how they want to construct this expansion. We have a call next week with them to go through it and just kind of gauge the temperature appetite for that city on this particular use. One good thing is the seller himself is actually in the self-storage space. Funny story is he is on this property with his family, according to the broker, and wishes to just simply sell it. Because I asked, said, well, if he's in self-storage and vehicle storage, why not develop this himself? He said, well, he's tired of making money for his family members. He wants to divest in this, go out to Texas, start his own project. He's tired of his partners and or family. So we feel confident about this property, and hopefully we'll have updates as we look towards moving to a PSA, and that'll all be contingent upon the zoning of this for the project that we have laid out. Any questions on this property?
How did you come to the building design, right? looks just like a big blank canvas. So how did you settle on 3 floor or, 3 levels and the size and all of that?
So, one thing I love about syndication or these projects is I'm a continuous learner and I really enjoy that. As I've looked at more properties and talked with more operators, contractors, architects, this is something that kind of dawned on me is how do we reduce the amount of paving costs or the pad site on raw land development? So the cost of like grading the land to prepare for development, paving it with asphalt or even a slab for the building can become very expensive, particularly the grading. So an architect recently suggested me, it's like, hey, why don't we reduce the footprint of the building going vertical? Although it will be probably additional $20 per square foot for construction, it's less expensive than grading out and paving additional land to have a larger one-story building. So, and if you look at a lot of the REITs like Cube Smart Life Storage, a lot of their models now are vertical 3-story facilities. So I said, if the big players are doing this, there's probably an efficiency or economies to scale of this. Why don't we look at utilizing the same capacity and then even potentially set ourselves up to subdivide the land off if we don't need it, develop pad sites or other features to put more gravy on the deal.
Very cool. Does that enhance the attractiveness of your development to those companies as a potential exit strategy? Or are you have a 5-year exit here?
Typically we'll see about a 7-year exit on the self-storage, just to maximize the returns on it. For multifamily, we're looking at usually a 5-year hold. And that's really predicated upon the lease up duration. Typically, we can expect maybe a 12-month lease up for multifamily. Self-storage will be on a 24 to 30-month average right now. Obviously, that's contingent upon the market. This one, we'd probably expect to lease up in a 18 to 24-month time frame, just because there's such low saturation and exponential growth. But yes, it would favor for an exit strategy just by having more opportunity, cash flow through it. And that's really what's going to come down to is the numbers at the end.
It's pretty cool. Thanks, Nick.
Of course. Any other questions, inputs? Oh, I'll transition on to the second part of this. While I'm pulling up this presentation, I'd like to give an update on actually a submission that Manpreet had sent out to us in Poughkeepsie, New York. Really cool industrial building, about 130,000 square feet. We talked about it last week on this call. Got in contact with the broker, had discussion. Everything on the face of this from a saturation standpoint, almost $200 for a 10 by 10 climate control. So it had some of the highest rates we've seen in the country. An affluent population that's just outside of New York City. It's a commuter town. Everything looked like a go. We're still assessing it. One thing we came across is it was actually built on a landfill. So it would probably not be a good opportunity for traditional financing because of that. And there is some migration of the underlying slab where about 30,000 square feet of the building has actually sunk a few inches. It's still operable and inhabitable, but it would present another challenge, additional CapEx. And who's to say that it's not going to continue based on being constructed on landfill. The other hurdle we found is the municipality itself owns that and uses it as an annex for their police, fire, other city services, whether it be offices or storage. And they're not ready. Half the city council is ready to sell it, move on. The other half says, hey, we got to identify a new location for this. So that can kind of tie up the timelines for it. But just want to give Manpreet a shout out for that submission. Give the group an update on just some of the real things that you'll encounter as you scout these deals and why your due diligence is so important, especially on the front end, to identify every aspect of the property, its particulars. In this case, this property was on the market for about 1,200 days, which tells me that there's something behind the scenes that has stopped other people from looking at this. That doesn't mean that we can't come in, solve that puzzle, take advantage of it. Certainly things have shifted over time in terms of market demands, other forces, but it just signals to me like, hey, what else is here that we don't know? The next property here is actually pretty close to Dan, Steve, and I. This is in Elk Grove, California. It's a suburb. It's one of the largest suburbs of Sacramento. In a very affluent population, we're seeing mean household incomes between $80,000 and $100,000, which I was actually pretty surprised to see. but it bolded favorably for this property, which we'll take a look at. So again, vacant lands, we're seeing about 12 acres here. So very large plot. Typically, we only need maybe 5-ish acres for self-storage. But encompassing vehicle storage on this, we'd be able to capitalize on the remaining plot of land, utilizing all 12 acres. And pictured in here, you guys can see the telephone or electrical wires going over the property. This is something that broker actually presented us as perhaps a challenge to the property, and something that we're currently looking into to see how that would potentially interrupt any kind of development, whether it be around it or underneath it, and what kind of particulars of that would be.
I had some experience with a project. It was multifamily, heavy value add, but was bordered by a power line easement. And in fact, the parking lot for the multifamily was built in the parking lot easement. This was an early 70s build, probably different regulations then. Parking lot at the time when it was built allowed cars and so on to be parked under it. There's a big question on the table about whether you could even park cars under it in modern day regulations. So it absolutely squashed a couple of ideas we had, but we never, other factors, we ended up walking away from that project. So I never actually did get the answer on what that was allowing or not, but it was a clear pattern of increased regulation under and around those. And the local jurisdiction had been approached by recreational groups who wanted to build a walkway through there. And they came to the conclusion that that was a great use model for that space. And so they came to encourage, over the last decade or so, they've been encouraging a lot of, plant and, like they would want to regulate the kind of trees you could even plant under it. It's like the kind of vegetation under it. They wanted to have a max limitation on height and a bunch of other stuff. But they were working with a trail to put a hiking trail through there, working with a team to put a hiking trail through there. So anyway, that whole experience made me walk away going, wow, power poles are an interesting beast. It could go any way.
Yep. And I appreciate that share, Bo. And this is definitely a first for us. This is the first property I've looked at with that type of easement. And we're like, okay, well, what does this mean? How do we approach it? Being in California, which has some of the heaviest regulations in every capacity and sector, I'm not optimistic about it, but it's definitely something to explore to the end. California is a funny state. They want all these concessions from developers on like, hey, you got to allocate extra money towards planting more trees for carbon offsets. And we need to have, affordable housing here, do this. But then when you turn around and ask for concessions on permitting timelines or tax abatements and stuff, like, well, we can't do that.
Good luck with that.
Typically why we focus on states.
They might let you build on one side or the other. I heard you say that it's large, right? And it was long and oblong. Maybe you build a 3-story storage facility on one end of that. On the other end, you have vehicles, and in between, you have a passage road that lets you go under the wires, but you're basically not building anything under the wires. You know what I mean? You might be able to maximize use of the property that way or something like that. Anyway.
You can bill us back for the architect input there, Bo. I appreciate
it. Anytime.
So to kind of summarize this, guys, if you can see the vacant land here, there is actually a house that sits on it. We would most likely just demolish this and continue with our development, but just an interesting property. Location here, we can see Elk Grove. Like I said, it's a major suburb of Sacramento. A lot of people that have escaped the city over the last several decades have moved out to Elk Grove. It just continues to grow and grow and grow. There's a lot of different developments going on in there, even casino developments nearby this property, but a very affluent suburb of Sacramento, which I was surprised to see. Taking a look at the demographics, we can see the dark blue represents 2 new builds that were recently delivered or under construction in the market. The light blue will indicate planning and permitted. So again, we're in an area of growth. We can see other developers. This particular one that's on top of our site is actually a boat and RV development that's going to next door, which tells me, hey, the zoning is probably favorable for this type of use. This can be a synergistic play where we have a competitive business, but it'll drive more people towards us. One thing that's interesting about the Sacramento area as you go outside the city is there's not a lot of boat and vehicle storage in most of the cities. So we're seeing areas like Elk Grove, Rancho Cordova, which is adjacent to Elk Grove, as kind of the cities or the municipalities are allowing for this. which can help concentrate a lot of people. While we may only drive 3 to 5 miles for a self-storage facility, people will drive up to 20 for vehicle storage. And with so many lakes, rivers, and different kind of recreation activities in Northern California, this is definitely a hotbed for those type of storage units. Rates here, we can see 180 on average for a 10 by 10, which is very, very strong. Made this a compelling opportunity. We're seeing some fluctuation in the rates going back to last year at a high of 217. So obviously some competitor intrusion or price wars, but it looks like it's rebounding as we've gotten into the summer months again. Most recently looking at 155 average. Diving into underwriting, we again have this built out to incorporate the 150,000 square foot self-storage facility. Because this area has about a 5 square foot per capita, we can easily absorb that 150,000 and still be below a 6.2 square foot per capita. We've built in about an additional 87,000 square feet of vehicle storage, both canopied and uncovered. We can see that the purchase price at 1.9 million with the associated CapEx costs, the appropriate returns over here. So still a generous deal, something that we'll continue to vet out in terms of regulations on those power lines and look to see if it's a good opportunity. Any questions on this one? Comments? Cool. Well, that's going to bring up Dan next year. He's going to share on 1 or 2 other properties regarding office to multifamily.
Great job for that, Nick. Any updates on the Cincinnati self-storage conversion opportunity?
Okay. Hey, everyone. Sorry for the little delay there. This just a recap on this one. Like Stephen had mentioned before, this is the 3040 Post Oak that we reviewed last week. Just a little bit overview on it. This is the 22-story building in Houston, Texas that we were looking at for conversion. Currently, I believe it was at 50% lease, and it's sitting on 4.09 acres and 420, just over 425,000 square feet. A few pictures of the property here, along with you could see off to the left there, the 7-story parking garage that's included as well. Nick and I met this past week over the phone with one of our financial guys to kind of discuss some options. What we found, we'd looked at the hospitality component, much like we did with Ricci Towers in Dallas. One thing that we found that the Houston market is very overly saturated with hospitality, making that just not a very viable option for us. Even some of the nicer hotels down there are only going for $100 or $150 a night tops. So there's not a lot of revenue, or not the potential revenue that we would expect or want out of that. In discussing with him, one of the things that he brought up that we might try to explore is actually moving all of the current leases of the building up to the top floors, and then trying to work in some kind of self-storage in the lower half of the building. His idea was that we could kind of ride out this this lull in the office space and use that self-storage income while we wait for that office space to rebound. And then potentially, as the rebound continues to happen, we'll phase out some of that office or the self-storage space and then be getting top dollar again for the office. That of course is, comes with a lot of ifs, I guess you could say, with it, with when and how the office market will rebound. But Nick and I are going to explore the options there and see if it might be a viable option for us. Does anybody have any questions about that? There's kind of a
That's
brief
actually a
summary
really-
on what's gone on.
That seems like a smart strategy. That gives you a scalable and modular way to expand or
Okay.
contract the space.
Oh, or did Bo have a question?
Oh, I was just saying, it seems like a clever strategy. It gives you a modular and sort of scalable way to expand or contract the space.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do it a floor at a time, or even lease out half a floor, right? Or repurpose half a floor
Exactly.
office and so on.
Exactly.
Really like that. And if the turmoil goes deeper, you take up more floors of storage, I suppose, as they vacate.
Yep.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, and once we get into the underwriting on the self-storage, hopefully by next week, we'll have another update on this one and how it's looking for us. And on to this next one. This one is a property in North Carolina in Winston-Salem, 418 North Marshall Street. This was brought to us by another broker that Nick has contacts with. A little bit of overview on the property. It's a 2-star office and just over 100,000 square feet and 4 stories tall. Sitting on 3 acres. There's not much parking down in that downtown area, so we would have to obviously look at the regulations on parking for the multifamily. One thing that I know that a lot of these cities are doing, and it's actually happening to my brother down in San Jose, California currently, is they're building a lot of multifamily 6-7 story buildings with absolutely zero parking. It's kind of right in the same neighborhood my brother's in. He's a little concerned that parking's going to become a nightmare in his neighborhood. So we'll have to explore that a little bit deeper when it comes to the parking. Here it looks like some renderings of the property of what it could look like. And then here is the location. You can kind of see here it's in the middle of downtown. Kind of little bit of stuff going on. Church over there, a hotel nearby, close to some kind of convention center. I don't know if that's a big one or just a little small one there. Here is a look at the analytics on this property. The absorption rate is good at 275, and the population growth is pretty good also at 2.3%. The vacancy rate for the market's a little bit high, but not too bad. But the rents are also for studios are pretty decent in the area, which typically helps quite a bit with the underwriting. And here's some comparables on it with the average rents. You're looking at overall about $1,100 a month for the rents. And here's a look at the underwriting. Not quite there yet. I don't think we factored in, I believe it was, I don't know if it was vacant or not. I can't recall on this one. But it is vacant on the property. And what we've found typically is that if we can get about 50% of the building lease, it'll help these numbers pencil just a little bit more on that and make it a little bit more doable for us. One of the challenges that comes with this building also is that we have to look at the design and the shape of it. I'd never seen this feature before, but in Google Earth or Google Maps, I was able to see inside of the building. There's kind of limited windows on the inside, not on the street side of the building. So that's something that we would definitely have to explore if there's some options there to knock out and make additional windows or make it a little bit more viable, since most of them have to have windows in these multifamily units. And that is all I have. Any questions from anybody?
I'll bolt onto that.
Great
Dan. I
job.
think one thing is when we're
Great
looking at
job,
this property, wall has not connected on the numbers yet to pencil.
I muted my end. Sorry, go ahead again.
One thing that we're looking at to help this deal pencil is re-envisioning the unit mix. So currently we have studio 1 and 2 bedrooms. We'll look to maybe eliminate the 2 bedrooms, go more towards the studio 1 bedroom rents to bolster the square foot rental value, and maybe make the unit sizes smaller to capture more as well, and explore any kind of reduction in cap.
Nick, is it possible for us to look at this more of as like a Class A conversion, and go high end on the rents, just to show if we did high end on the fix and finishes, what that would look like?
Absolutely. That's something I'm exploring right now with Dan. I think our one challenge is the offering as far as like amenities. We would not necessarily have a pool, but we can certainly explore the Class A feel, because if you guys saw in the property summary, the walk score was 91, which is extremely high. It was to notice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so this is in a nice urban area where these tenants will be able to have access to entertainment, retail, you name it. So if we can get this modeled correctly at the right purchase price, there's an opportunity to make the numbers work. That's why I wanted to include on today's presentation. Just because what was not on the presentation is some of the interiors right now. It's actually a pristine building, where the CapEx would not need to be as large outside of the unit conversions. And some of the marketing material for it has shown the conversion to apartments and a mixed use of retail. So we're going to explore changing the unit mix, sizes, steepening the rents, as well as bringing in a retail component to maybe fetch a high dollar per square foot on those rentals.
Love it. All right. Any questions from the audience? I think this kind of gives you guys a kind of a view, if we were to pull back the curtain on an internal acquisitions team call. This is pretty much how I like how these calls go, so you guys can understand, the inner workings of, putting a deal together. And most importantly, if you want to be that tip of the spear, especially in this space, you got to find those unique opportunities that not only pencil, but have tremendous upside that has not necessarily been realized. So something to consider. But having that, under control and being able to attract and bring investors, that's paramount. So, sometimes I believe it's the deal first, then the capital second. So I think that what we need to do is just continue focusing on bringing these deals up front. And, as a team and as a group, feel free to share with any opportunities that you may have in your markets that you want us to take a look at, and we can certainly give some feedback. Anything else from the team, the group? I think we're at the top of the hour. Great call. Lots of exciting things happening, and glad to have you guys be part of it through these weekly Zoom calls.
Thanks, Steve. You and your team really have some great stuff, and I love your transparency. It's really been interesting to learn. So thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks for the feedback. I appreciate that, and we'll continue to do so and provide value. And I believe just putting that positive energy in this space and this asset type, and this, most importantly, this niche, is going to pay dividends by attracting those right institutional investors that we ultimately want to shore up with as we realize more deal flow. So, the market is certainly challenging right now. Interest rates have just experienced another hike, so cap rates have expanded even more so. So it offers up some more opportunity for us as acquisition managers to really find those unique opportunities. So I implore you guys to do just that and take advantage of this market that we're in. And we're not going to be in this market forever. So, but certainly try to take advantage of it and apply, some of the knowledge that you learn on these calls. But besides that, that's all I have. Everyone, I appreciate you guys joining. Thanks again, Dan, Nick, for participating and presenting. And thanks everyone for joining. We'll catch up next Thursday, same time. And you guys have a great day.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. All right, bye now.